You're listening to episode number 40 of the UpRev Ninja podcast, and I'm your host, Tom Hudson.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the UpRev Ninja podcast. If this is your first time listening, thanks for joining us. This show is produced each week with the single intent of discovering the tips, tricks, hacks, and lessons learned from our guests that has catapulted them into living the best version of themselves. Join your host, Tom Hudson, as he continues his search for the best methods to uprev his life. Now, let's dive into the show.
Craig Kulyk writes about how habits, productivity, and mindfulness intersect with creating good mornings. Although his relationships with mornings hasn't always been rosy, he was a morning grouch until 2012 when he started to work from home. He realized quickly that he didn't make the most of his morning, the day would slip away. As Craig invested more and more into mornings, he gradually discovered a gold mine of creativity, productivity, and fulfillment that led him to start the blog, Create Good Mornings. Through his candid writing and crappy stick figure drawings, he shares tools, insights, and tactics to help you customize your own good mornings on your own terms. Hey, today on the UpRev Ninja podcast, I've got guest Craig Kulyk. How you doing today?
Doing great. How are you, Tom?
I'm doing pretty fantastic. I'm looking forward to chatting with you. A mutual friend of ours, introduced us. Looking over your website and everything, I'm like, this guy is an awesome fit. Definitely kind of brings me back to my heyday of trying to be more efficient at life. So before I ruin everything, though, I've already read your bio out to my audience. I would love for you to tell us just like who you are and where you're at today in life.
All right. Well, my name's Craig. Where am I at today in life, and who am I? Big questions to start with.
I know.
Let me distill some of that. Well, the reason we connected is that I have a blog. It's called Create Good Mornings. So that's probably a good place to start. And I'll add on to that I am not a morning person. I've never really been a morning person, although I suppose I'd have to admit that I have become one. That all started about 6 years ago when I started working from home. One thing that I realized pretty quickly was if I didn't make the most of the first part of my day would quickly slip away. I'd sometimes work into the evenings, and habits that I wanted to build, I wasn't really getting them done in the evenings. I'd find some sort of excuse. I'd be lazy. I just really struggled to build habits in the evening. And I was at a point in my life where I wanted to make some changes, and evenings weren't working for me. That resulted in trying the mornings, and it started to work. So I stacked more habits on top of that and kind of just delved further down the path of, okay, well, I've built some rituals or routines in this area of my life, and this area of my life seems to be improving. Then what can I do in other areas of my life? So it's put me down this path of thinking a lot and experimenting with productivity, mindfulness, morning routines, effectiveness, efficiency, happiness, all those types of things. And it really is a never-ending process. You kind of solve maybe one thing in one area, and then there's something else to look at. And so I think a really important piece that came into my life is the idea of mindfulness and being present. I know that's something that we hear a lot about these days. It's become almost cliche in a way, but I find that was something that was really missing for a while because I was trying to be really productive and optimize without stopping and fully enjoying the moments that I was living. So there's been a shift in the past few years to really try to cultivate more of slowing down and mindfulness.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think it's like a lot of things, right? You should meditate. Oh, you should be mindful. What's your intention? Everyone jumps on the spam wagon. It means something else. It's a different definition for everyone. However, I'm completely in agreement with you. I mean, when you start putting some of these practices into use, it can be pretty pivotal to your life, your game, everything. But it can kind of take me back. So you had this epiphany that, man, I'm not getting anything done. So you need to start working on your mornings. What kind of walk us through that process? What did you start changing first?
Sure. The first one, well, there was a few, and to be honest, it's hard to remember exactly what order they fell in. But
Yeah.
definitely one of the first ones was I wanted to do more physiotherapy for an injury that I had playing ultimate frisbee. I started playing ultimate frisbee in 2004 in, oh, maybe no, 2005 in South Korea, and I got really into it, super obsessed as I sometimes do with certain activities, and got to the point where I was traveling a lot to play in tournaments and started to compete at higher levels at the national level, um, and had just big dreams and visions of how good could I possibly get and where could I travel to play in these tournaments. And so this injury that I had at the time was a big setback for me because this was around 2010, I'd say. I was at a peak in my ultimate frisbee career, if you will.
All right.
It was just really important to me that I wanted to mend my injury. But even though it was that important to me, I still found that in the daily rhythms and routines, at night I would often find an excuse that I was too tired or I'll do it tomorrow kind of thing. So I was doing it sometimes, but not nearly as much as I needed to if my actions were going to be in alignment with my goals.
And where did that take you?
Well, different ways to go at this, but the end result is not the story that I was hoping to create at that time.
Okay.
I
All right.
still have not played ultimate frisbee since then. The injury that I had was a lot worse than I realized or expected at the time. It was a groin injury that I ended up getting surgery for, and the surgery didn't work, or it maybe worked in some areas but didn't in other areas and created other problems.
Hmm.
So that definitely led me down a path of being really miserable for a while, that I couldn't do this one thing that I truly loved to do. To add on top of that, I started working full time for Vancouver Ultimate Frisbee League doing marketing communications in 2012. And every day I was thinking about Ultimate Frisbee. My friends, a lot of them still played Ultimate Frisbee, and it was my social circle. So that was really challenging for me. It was something I really wanted to be doing, but physically was unable to do. So that's I think partly where the mindfulness piece came in. It was definitely there was a lot of that time that I was spending, you know, in my head focused on the things that I couldn't be doing as opposed to the things that I could be doing.
You fell into this place of, being very miserable. How did this affect your work, your relationships, other dreams and goals that you had?
It affected everything.
Yeah.
I found it really difficult to make progress or headway in other areas of my life. And not only was I not making progress in other areas of my life, but it was hurting my relationships. It was hurting my relationship with my partner. It was hurting my relationships with my friends because when I would show up and spend time with them, I had a hard time reconciling the fact that I was essentially really jealous of the fact that they could do all of these things that I really wanted to be doing, but I couldn't be doing.
Right.
I really did get locked into the patterns of thinking that were really negative and always looking towards the future of like, what can I do now to make the future better? And how am I going to get to that place in the future?
So you said mindfulness that's kind of where this came into the picture. I mean, how was this introduced to you? Did you just come across it on the World Wide Web or a friend?
I started doing meditation around the same time as physiotherapy, actually,
Okay.
because I couldn't do much in terms of exercise. And I was really craving the that sort of the lack of thinking or that just mental break that you get from going for a run or doing some exercise where you're really not in your head, you're in your body and
Yeah.
just in that space, right? That sort of flow state, we might call it. So I started experimenting with meditation, but as you know, I think you've meditated as well. It's hard, and oftentimes you're not really meditating. You're just sitting there and thinking a lot.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it wasn't really until a few years later when a lot of things started to pile up. In my job, I was really busy and a bit overwhelmed. And then I was also running ultimate frisbee tournaments on the side on my own, on top of my job, which meant that I was working a lot of extra hours. Um, and it got to a point where I essentially overworked myself to the point of burnout. And there was one ultimate tournament that I ran where I essentially was limping on the Sunday to try and to organize things and to move things around. And at the end of the tournament, I collapsed and couldn't walk for 2 days. I was physically, mentally, emotionally exhausted from that experience.
Mm.
And I realized at that point that something needed to change because I was definitely partly channeling my frustration into my work of, well, I have this so I can do this, but I was still working to a point where I was thinking about the future. And even though I was doing meditation at the time, wasn't really cultivating the practices or the results of those practices, like, in a tangible way in my day-to-day life.
Right.
A few months later, my dad suddenly ended up in the hospital, and I flew back home to Winnipeg to spend time with him. It was a pretty bad situation. He had MS, and it was an MS attack, and he was bedridden in the hospital. That was definitely where everything kind of got shook up within me. Just being in a hospital environment for a month, day in, day out, spending hours a day there, it changes your perspective completely on the problems that you have versus the problems that other people have and the problems that you could have. Um, and unfortunately, this story doesn't have a good ending either. But my dad passed away quite suddenly in the hospital after a month. And that was also obviously a big shakeup for me. Um, there's the sadness and the grief and all of that, which I'm probably not going to jump into that. But on the other side of it was this understanding that I was so much in my head before that I really did lose sight of some of the things that were really important in terms of, what do you have right now? What are you tangibly able to enjoy in your life today? So that really did have an impact on me in terms of being able to cultivate that mindfulness and cultivate that gratitude in a different way. Because suddenly the problem of not being able to play a sport that I love or be as active as I wanted to be didn't seem like nearly as big of a problem.
Well, so that practice of gratitude, like you mentioned, and it just you pivoted at that point. It sounds like you started witnessing everything that was in your life that was quote going in the right direction, whatever that means, right? But it's definitely that practice of gratitude and being mindful of that. So take us from that point of the journey, Craig, and just in regards to, okay, so you've kind of have had this epiphany, and you're coming through to the other side. Where did that take you?
Well, I realized that I needed to make some changes, and I didn't know what those were. For a long time, I'd been considering starting something online, a blog or an online business. I just didn't know what it was. And even throughout this time, I'd been writing down thoughts and ideas around that. Although I was also running these other ultimate frisbee tournaments. A few months, that wasn't a few months, it was probably about 6 months later, the one ultimate frisbee tournament that I was running that was doing really well up in Whistler, I got a phone call from them that they said they were going to cancel the fields for this year, that we weren't going to be able to use the fields anymore, which essentially canceled the tournament.
Hmm.
That also made me realize, okay, I really need to do something different or change something. And that's when I started to pay a lot more attention to, okay, well, maybe this idea of starting an online business or starting a blog is something that I can do now, even though I still didn't know what to do. That held me back for a long time. That just this decision of, I want to do something, but I have no idea what that is. Like, not that I had no idea, but I had ideas, but I didn't have any sort of theme to those ideas. There was no central anchor point.
Okay.
I started to go to different events around that time. One of them was called Live Your Legend. There's a website called Live Your Legend. It's a really great resource. It's for people who are looking to make a shift, essentially, and especially people who are looking to change the work that they do. Um, at that time, I wasn't necessarily looking to change the work that I do in terms of my full time work, but I was looking for something else to direct some of the energies and skills and learnings that I had from other parts of my life, which is what has come to be the blog Create Good Mornings. Um, so to tie back into that, I went to a Live Your Legend event here in Vancouver. I met a few people that were also kind of some in similar places, some were further ahead, some were still have not really sure what they wanted to do or what changes they wanted to make. But I met someone there who, his name's Aaron, he's a coach, and we met for coffee just to talk about goals a few weeks later. And I realized at that point, going into the meeting, I had no thought process around working with him. But as soon as we had a conversation for about 30 minutes, I realized, okay, I think if I work with this guy, he can help me to figure out what my blog can be about. Because at the time, I was wanting to write about habits and productivity, mindfulness, but I didn't know what the connection was. A week later, we worked together and came up with the idea of mornings. Mornings being very much a foundation for my day, tying in all of these different ideas, and that's where it came from. So that's been the big shift. Is now I'm devoting a lot of my energy, waking up early in the morning, writing this blog, and sharing all of the things that I've learned in the past 5 years, as well as the things that I'm continuing to learn as I read and research and talk to other people about their mornings.
How are you today in regards to, yeah, you've got this, online community that you've built, and this blog, and are you still involved in the Ultimate Frisbee at all, or is that just,
Yeah,
yeah, you are?
yeah. I'm still full time. I still work full time for the Vancouver Ultimate League, doing the marketing, which is also really great. I'm really enjoying the organization and where we're at right now because we've grown a lot in the last 5 years. We're now the biggest Ultimate League in the world. We weren't when I started, although we were a pretty big league. We have now 5,600 members, and we're growing in all different ways. We're growing at the youth level. We're growing regionally. We're doing different types of leadership initiatives. Like we recently made a bunch of changes to be transgender inclusive, and we're sharing that with other leagues in Canada and the US. So there's some really cool stuff that I'm doing in my job, which I love. And on top of that, I've got this blog where a lot of it's an outlet for me in a way to learn and to grow. But I'm also realizing that this is, like you said, it really is becoming a community. There's people that there's definitely a give and take, right? People are
Yeah.
sharing their experiences with me, and I'm able to learn from what they've done or resources that they share with me, and then double down, learn on that, and share more in terms of content on the blog.
What do you swear by? You know, and I'm not looking for that silver bullet.
Well, I don't know if my answer to that question would necessarily be mornings. For me, mornings was the solution to the problem that I had of that I couldn't form the habits that I wanted to. As a result, I've discovered that there's this whole treasure trove in the morning in terms of being able to get stuff done and having a very clear, fresh mind to do the most important work that I have in front of me. I think that there's obviously a lot of benefits for mornings for people, but I don't think that's necessarily the answer for everyone. I think it depends very much on your situation in terms of how much time you might be able to invest in the morning. Obviously, people with more flexible schedules could do a lot more in their mornings.
Right.
However, I do think what is important is when you're waking up, doing that with awareness and intention. So cultivating habits in terms of what am I thinking about and what am I doing? Why am I doing that? Is what I'm doing aligning with what I want to be doing and where I want to be going in the future? So, someone who only has 10 minutes in the morning, you could still really make the most of that 10 minutes as opposed to someone who has, 3 hours. In terms of one thing, though, that's a really hard question, but I'm going to pick one so that I can answer your question directly. Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that I can answer this. I would say, hmm, I think the one thing for me is going to be different than the one thing for everyone. But the one thing is tying into this idea of doing things with awareness and intention. There are lots of different ways to go about doing that. So meditation is one of them. Journaling is one of them. Simply paying attention to what you're thinking about is one of them. As an overall strategy, I would say cultivating awareness and intention in what you're doing.
Yeah, and I'm in agreement with you. I mean, there's, you know, if there was one thing for everyone, it would be in the instruction book that we come with, right? Um,
Right. Sit down at the end of one year, beginning of the other. So usually last week in December, first week of January, I'll look at the previous year and think about everything that went well and create a really long list. Well, not really long, but usually it's 10 to 20 items of things that I'm really happy that happened or that I did, successes. Another column is things that didn't go well. And then I'll start to think in terms of buckets. I have, I think, 8 or 9, similar to the ones that you mentioned. And then just start writing down things that I want to do this year, really just brain dumping them all
yeah.
out. After that, I'll go and prioritize like what's essential, what's important, and what's nice to do. And from that, I'll end up getting 5 to 10 goals across all the categories that are sort of what I really want to be doing this year. And a lot of them aren't goals in the sense of I need to hit this number or reach this future target, because I found that when I was creating goals like that, it was really just setting myself up for disappointment when I didn't reach them.
Yeah.
Instead, a lot of them are habits that I want to build. Things like, I want to, let's say one of the goals is to have a closer relationship with a family member or family members. Then I'll translate that into I'm going to make sure that I call or text every one of my cousins on their birthdays, and I'm going to make sure that I text or call my sister 4 times a week.
Okay.
And then I track habits uh, based on that, which I found to be really, really helpful to make small gains in different areas, because sometimes they're really, really tiny things. Like that's texting someone is, you know, 30 seconds kind
Yeah.
of thing. It's more just a reminder, because I find that we have so many things going on in our day and age, and we're all trying to do everything, that if I don't, for me personally, if I don't set and track that in some way, things really start to slip.
So how do you set that and track that?
Okay, well, the setting part is sort of that process that I mentioned, where
Okay.
I'll look at it every year and then write down everything I might want to do, prioritize, and take the top 5 or 10. Those 5 or 10 become goals that I'll look at every month, but it's not, I don't expect January 1st to suddenly flip the switch on all of them. So I'll take 2 or 3 of them and look at them as the main focus for the month, and then think about what are the things that I need to be doing in this area to start to either set this habit in motion or to move the dial on this goal or habit. And every month I will look at what I've done and compare that to what my goals were, and then decide if I'm going to switch the goals for the next month. And then on the more granular level, in terms of the habits, I track that every day. So I used to do this up until a few months ago with a paper and pen. So
Okay.
write them all out for the day. And depending on what time period, I guess I've been in the past few years, sometimes there'll be like 5 habits, and sometimes there'll be 15 or 20. Right now, I have quite a few,
Okay.
more than that, but some of them are really really small.
Right.
And part of it is I'm tracking it now in Excel. Uh, I could see which ones are just ingrained that I'll do them pretty much no matter what, and those ones tend to be the ones in the morning and at the end of my workday. I'm pretty good at startup and the shutdown.
Right.
The habits that I want to develop in the middle, or the little things that I want to do in the middle, there's some that I can get to most of the time. There's some that I'm noticing that I'm not getting to at all. That just tells me, okay, I need to reframe. Maybe I need to remove this. Maybe I'm trying to do too much. So a lot of it is also changing my mindset around how I feel about that, because and I think this is really important. This is like the awareness and intention part, because sometimes we set goals and we start to develop habits, and if we don't achieve that, then we feel really guilty about that. But for me, it's not about getting every single habit. It's more about there's a few of them that I really want to make sure that I get, and there's other ones that I'm trying out. I'm experimenting for a month or two to see if it feels right or if it works, and then I'll change it up.
Is there something that you're currently working on that you're really trying to improve?
I feel like there's so many things.
I know, and it's true for all of us, but is there one thing that just really kind of sticks out, or maybe it's been a sticking point for you that you've tried to work on and you just haven't quite nailed it yet, that you're still working towards that that goal?
Yeah, I'm trying to think which one is the lowest hanging fruit right now. I'd say the thing that I'm most struggling with is regular exercise. This ties back into the injury that I
Okay.
talked about earlier. And I've tried to find different ways to go about this. The best way for me to exercise in terms of physical fitness right now is to go swimming, because it feels the best for my body, and it's the best workout. But it's also somewhat time consuming. I got to drive to
Mm,
the pool or bike to the pool, change, swim, come back, shower. So it's like at least 45 minutes. And
yeah.
every day, sometimes it's hard to find that. So I've tried running, going for short runs and jogs, but my body is not liking that. I've tried to do exercise at home, and my body is generally okay with that, but not always. So I'm really experimenting with different ways that I can do different types of exercise in a short amount of time. I think biking is probably the other way that I'm going to look to expand it, just to do more commuting and biking. That's something that uh, I can do more now, but I live in Vancouver. It's very rainy, so there's lots of days where I
Yeah.
find myself not wanting to go on a bike. But this happened today. I was actually going to bike to an appointment that I had. It's really rainy. I decided that no, I'm not going to do that. And I was listening to my narrative in my head as I was doing that. Like, why am I now resisting getting on my bike? And it was really about the fact that I don't have very good rain gear.
Okay.
If I had better rain gear, I'd feel better, but I don't want to show up to this meeting where I'm wet through and through.
That's a good awareness, though. Knowing
Yeah,
that, right?
so that's my lesson is, okay, if I'm going to try biking more for exercise, then I need to get better rain gear.
I've been in the same thing, like I love hiking, and I do not like hiking when it's warm outside. So, not much you can do about that. So I'll just go hiking at 4 in the morning. I would rather wake up, before the sun comes up, get to where I'm going to go hike and be off the mountain by noon if I can. But yeah, it was the same type of awareness. Like, I really love this. Why am I not going? What can I do to change that? So, well, you've shared a lot with us today, and imagine that there's someone out there today, listening to this, and they're like, "Wow, okay, so he's gone. You've gone through a lot. This physical injury. You had this one path, being an athlete, and then you've pivoted to everything that you're doing today, and you get a lot of joy out of everything that you're doing, and you're still involved in the sport. so someone out there is listening to that today and like, I don't know if I can do that, or they're just kind of stuck. They're in a rut. What kind of guidance would you offer them?
Well, I'd say that those ruts, they happen to everyone. That and it's not something that when you're in a how do I word this? When you're in a rut, it's really hard to see yourself getting out of the rut, or it's hard to even see sometimes that life is full of times when there's not ruts. But that generally just isn't true. Most people don't get continuously knocked down by wave after wave after wave. At some point, you're able to stand up and walk out of the ocean in this metaphor.
Yeah.
I think having that perspective of knowing that, okay, this is the way it is right now. It isn't always going to be this way, and thinking about what are the baby steps that I can take right now. Like, what are the things that give me some joy, or what are the things that what is the biggest problem right now causing me the most uh, grief or anxiousness or whatever those emotions are, and then what are the steps that I can take right now to do something about that. I think really starting small, because when this all started for me back in 2000, I guess 12, when I started with morning routines and had that injury, was doing the physiotherapy. Like, uh, I was in a rut for sure. I had just gone through, or was going through, a breakup with my partner at the time. Was doing a lot of self reflection. Had the injury, was really frustrated with that. There were quite a few things in my life that weren't going very well. So I really tried to focus on like what is going well and what can I do in that area, but also how do I start to move the dial somewhat on these other areas? What are some changes that I need to make? And it's small, it's incremental, and it really is a never-ending process. Like I can't say that every day I feel amazing. I definitely go through lots of challenges now. Like sometimes I feel like I'm in a rut, even though it might not appear like I'm in a rut.
Yeah.
So yeah, it really is. It's a journey, and it's continuously coming back to these small steps and connecting with other people that can help you along the way. I think is also really, really important. Getting a community of people that are interested in what you're interested in, or who have had success in an area that you want to have success in, can be really, really helpful and motivating.
So those relationships, I'm in agreement with you. I think they help us in so many different ways. They can give us courage and strength and just a sounding board. So again, I think relationships and finding those people that are on the same journey as you can be very pivotal and get you to that next level in life.
Absolutely. It always looks like other people have everything together from our own perspectives, right? We look at other people and think, oh, they have so much together, and I'm lacking in some way. And that's something that everyone feels. And once you start to realize that, it makes things a lot easier. One of the things that Tim Ferriss mentioned when I saw him at a book launch in New York about a year and a half ago, this is one of the things that stuck with me the most. He said to the crowd that he's talked to a lot of people that are very successful. And the one thing that he can report is that every one of us in that room are better in some way at something than one of those successful people. That although they're successful in one area of their life and very, very successful, often these people are very unsuccessful in other areas of their life.
Yeah.
These aren't people that are successful in everything, right? And we tend to hold ourselves to this standard that we should be successful in everything. It's quite the opposite. We're not going to be successful in everything. We can't be. There's just too many things to try and be successful in. So you do have to pick and choose, especially at different times of your life. What is most important right now? What are your priorities? And how do you become successful in that while also keeping the ship afloat in other areas?
Well, Craig, what's the best way for my audience to connect with you?
Definitely the blog, creategoodmornings.com. From there, you can sign up to the newsletter and get a few different guides that I have. There's one that's called Love Waking Up, 5 Simple Strategies to Customize Your Morning Routine, as well as another one that I just released, which is this mega post and mega ebook called 127 Morning Rituals, the Ultimate List to Customize Your Morning Routine. I'm also on Twitter, which you can access through the website. And a couple of things to mention. I don't know if you're familiar with the World Domination Summit. Are you,
I
Tom?
am. Yeah. Please share this.
Okay.
I know where you're headed with this.
The World Domination Summit is a really awesome event that's held in Portland, Oregon once a year. It's an unconventional, what's it called? I think it's something like an unconventional conference for unconventional thinkers or something along those lines. It brings together people who are looking to do some good in the world and to do that in a way that might not be your norm. So you have a lot of people who might be like you, Tom, podcasters. There might be bloggers. There's people who have full-time jobs and they're just looking for maybe something different in terms of the work that they're doing. It's not all people who are living the freelance lifestyle, but it definitely does cater to people who are interested in at least not your typical 9 to 5 type of a job. But it's a really cool event because not only is there a ton of people, there's like 1,500 people that go from all over the world, but also it's this really great mix of meetups where anyone can organize a meetup on anything. So there's meetups on things like alternative relationships and cryptocurrency or business focused stuff, networking with people. On top of that, there are workshops that are led by people who have some sort of expertise in some category. So it could be storytelling or productivity or um, building a business on your hobby. And then there are also on the weekend TED Talk style type speeches in a big theater. So there's a lot of different things that happen, and there's also really great parties, which I love to go to. So I went to this event last year for the first time, completely fell in love with it. It's where I met our mutual friend Jeremy,
Yeah.
and it's such a great event that I just impulsively, like I sometimes do, decided that I want to buy an extra ticket and I'm going to give a ticket away on my blog. So there's a
That's
contest that I'm running right now. It goes until April the 7th for people who are interested in this. I ask you 2 questions. One of them, the most important question, is why do you really want to go to this conference? I want to give this ticket to someone who might not otherwise go, is looking for this experience that could change their perspective and change the direction that they're heading.
Yeah, that's awesome. I thought that's what you were going to go with, and yeah, that's great. Uh, I totally forgot about that conference, to be honest with you, until I started reading your blog a few months back. But I had already purchased tickets to go to Podcast Movement. It's like the same week in July. Um,
Okay.
and yeah, but that's on my list for next year, for 2019. So yeah, I think Chris Skillabo, he started that 2010 through 2012, somewhere in there, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I came across his blog when he was still traveling all the countries in the world. So totally different time. But well, with that said, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to bring up?
I don't think so. On top of just to sweeten the pot, I also give away books on my blog once a month. Books on personal development, productivity, creativity, doing work that matters. So if you're interested in that, that's another fun little giveaway that I do. In terms of a parting message, I think just want to say I appreciate what you're doing, Tom. I think your podcast is great. I'm sure a lot of people listening will gain a lot from all these different episodes, and I am honored that you were interested in having me as a guest.
No, thank you. The honor is all mine. I do appreciate your time and energy, and for sharing your journey with us. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right, we covered a lot in this episode with Craig. We got into like rituals, routines, mindfulness, happiness, efficiency, effectiveness, flow, gratitude, and just so many other topics in this episode, But the one thing I really took away from this was just having awareness and intention and, asking yourself, what you're doing and why you're doing these things. He has an example in the show where he said he wants to start riding his bicycle a little bit more often, and recently it was raining and he decided not to ride his bicycle. So he sat down and like, why do I not want to do this? Just those few extra seconds, he is like, oh, it's because I don't have rain gear. And boom, buys rain gear, will ride his bicycle now in the rain. Living in Vancouver, it rains all the time, so problem solved.
Thanks for listening to the UpRev Ninja podcast with your host, Tom Hudson. Navigate to our website at uprev.ninja today, where you will find additional resources to help you discover the best version of you. While you're there, join our newsletter and join the discussion on your favorite social media platforms. We've got some awesome guests lined up to share with us how they are becoming the best versions of themselves. Again, thank you for listening. Now it's time to go out and uprev your life.